All right, takes us to discussion items. Anybody?
Yeah, I've got some. I was waiting to see if anybody else wanted to take a turn. Okay. It was brought up at the last meeting by Richard. Some of our declining enrollment, what's going on for the last 22 years. I don't know if, Richard, you got any information since last month that you were going to plan on sharing based off of your questions and concerns?
I never
Steamed.
stated that. I was going to.
All right. Well, then I did do some digging and talk to staff who have been here for a really long time, just get their assessment. I've been here for most of that, but didn't know everything. So I'm just going to share what was shared with me. So declining enrollment was one of the things that was brought up. We see that again this year, but I think that's a little bit different than other years. What are some of the factors? Declining birth rate, impact on 9/11 on that birth rate, housing market crash and recession in 2008 impacted Michigan hard, student enrollment in the area especially. That translated also to loss of manufacturing jobs in Grand Rapids, Muskegon, et cetera. And then that also affected our student enrollment. Lack of adequate housing in the area. You look at the percentage of our teachers who don't live in the district. You talk to a realtor and you'll know housing is in short supply in our district. Lack of industry and jobs available in the area. Case in point, I have to travel outside the district to get a job. Bowl House closing down greatly reduced migrant student enrollment. DACA and the threat of families being separated reduced more migrant families. Manzana, also I hope I'm saying that right, it became more of the norm for migrant workers instead of here. So I think what the number I got was at one time we were talking to 2 migrant students per class, like classroom, not grade level. I'm not a mathematician, but you do the math, that adds up. And then this was interesting. The school did an assessment in 2003 based on the 2000 census. And because of the above, factors that I mentioned earlier, they actually projected this is where this district would be at in 2023. So we're actually not that far off of what the signs were already pointing towards. Then you throw in a pandemic that greatly affected things, and now quite honestly you throw in all the turmoil that's happened over the last year, and you get where we're at. Part of that also is we as a district and as a community, so this is not just the district, is putting notice on our community, have not passed a new bond since the middle school. I don't know, that was built in 91. I know I graduated in 91 and they moved in 92. So I don't know if it was a 89 or 90 bond or whatever it was. If you think this was a new bond, it wasn't. It was an extension of that bond, so it didn't raise any taxes. It just prolonged any of the payments. So we as a district, or we as a community, have not shown the financial support necessary to maintain, and not just maintain, but thrive. But what we do see, I know that comeback test scores are really low. Test scores are low across the board. What you will see is that this district, as I've mentioned repeatedly and will continue to champion, does more with less than any district I know, and I work with a ton of districts on a yearly basis. Some other things that happened. 2001, Tom Cutler, those of you who have been around long enough remember him as one of our superintendents, reported that school funding was in crisis and that all schools were headed to a financial cliff in 3 years, which again coincides with when you start looking at those numbers. At that time we were actually pretty flush with cash because we had the addition of the Newaygo Community Education Program, or the Learning Center, which was in the old middle school, which was then torn down. Scott Wagner started making cuts, especially after the recession of 2008. incorporated pay freezes for administrators that lasted around 5 years. I'm sure some of you in the audience will remember that. Which led to attrition, and then you can't replace someone, when they retire or resign. Reduce spending in all budgets or in all departments. Sounds like that's going to be something we're talking about again. Frozen contracts, reduced staff, privatized services, minimal supplies, increased charges for facility use, limited field trips, reduced co-curricular activities, additional duty substitute aid freezes. All of these factor into both retention, student number-wise, and then also the scores. Reduced sections and increased teacher-student ratio. Eliminated or consolidated administrative positions. Here's what we've lost. Assistant superintendent, fitness center director, fine arts center director, primary center principal, learning center director, community education and recreation director. We keep doing those things though. We keep doing the after school program and the other programs because these people bust their ass for our students. Eliminated teachers and sports staff. Yes, there's a second page. Spend down, use money for the board actions, what happened? Spend down the fund balance, which, is what's recommended, but it put us into where we're at like a zero mills. Like we're scraping the bottom compared to all of our competitors. Use money from the general fund to help put Band-Aids on buildings and sites instead of improvements for our educational services. One of the reasons why we're a decade behind on our math, upgrading our math, is we didn't have the money. And then, rightfully so, everybody's hitting the recession, so we have not asked this community, for that bond, for years. And then we finally have, and it's just people haven't been receptive to it yet, so I will continue to champion. We need it, or this district is just gonna fail. It may not be this year, may not be next year, but that's the course that we're headed on. If we don't, as a community, rally around our biggest employer and our only district in the community for public education. And then, Jonathan Wan, we're still feeling the effects of him. He negotiated in a maximum amount of contributions for staff, for healthcare benefits, which again led to more people leaving and just not replacement. It's just one vicious cycle that our staff and our administrators have been doing everything in their power to overcome. And who feels the greatest effect? The kids. Look around you in the world today. How many times are kids suffering because of poor decision making by adults? So, if you want to know why we're at where we're at, well, not right now. I think you all know why we're at where we're at this very moment, but why we have been where we're the trend over the last 20 years. Talk to your administrators, talk to your teachers who've been here. This is what they're saying. That's all I have.
Any other discussion items?
I have one other thing. Is no one going to even mention that the mural came down? So I'll mention it in a positive way. And thank you to, had you started by then? No? Yeah, no, okay. So thank you, Dan, and thank you, whoever you're, Scott. Thank you, Scott. We're able to go in and dismantle one wall going from the back side of where the mural was and remove it without damage, which is phenomenal if any of you have ever worked with drywall. That's just crazy. And so luckily our fantastic art student, who's a senior this year, right, will be able to save that artwork that she created. And there's a couple of things that just still confuse me and bother me about this. One is just obviously the character assassination of the artist, which is, once again, adults behaving badly around students and kids. But the other then is just the misguided hate-mongering that went along with not understanding what a piece of artwork means and can do. And I heard about like Rainbow Bright. okay? Who was a cartoon character from the mid-'80s. Get it? So I'm in the museum the other day. We have our museum school, the middle school, 8th graders. They always do a curation project where they put together an exhibit. And this year it was on toys. So they have this one that is, I'm like, oh, I recognize that. That's Rainbow Bright. And it was all about the history of that character in that cartoon, which was spreading bright and cheeriness in a doomy and gloomy world, you know? So that's pretty amazing. I also understand that some of the other symbols and things that were causing people such distress were, you know, from a cartoon on the Disney Network. And the creator of that show actually saw all this, because who couldn't if you were paying attention in the media, and reached out and said, you know, hey, thank you for including my, you know, I recognize those are characters from my show. That's awesome. You know, and still, people just, they couldn't see through their own narrow-minded focus, and that's really sad. But I think we as a community, right, we're ready to move on. I know the artist is, I know the health center is. That was clear when they did their press release or their statement after the contract was done, that was a very big issue, obvious issue to them. You know, so I'm happy that it was able to come down. So thank you for taking the time and the energy and dedication to reward a student's hard work. And now she has interest from people, well, across the country, but she, you know, and having her display that for Art Prize next year. And I think that speaks to the power of art, first of all, but our art program. That's the quality of students we're putting out into the community through all the hard work of our teachers and programs here. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody was aware it is down and it is safe. So thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion items? Okay, that takes us to